Welcome to the African History Network show right here on 910 AM, the Superstation, the Future Radio. Hey, I'm your host, Brother Michael M. Hotep. It is Thursday, March 25th, 2021, and we are live. Hope everybody's doing well today. Well, it's been a very, very busy day, and if you have been paying attention to what's going down in Georgia, there was a song I talked about a couple of weeks ago back during the presidential campaign. Called The Devil Went Down to Georgia. And I talked about how it sounded like, Charlie Daniels. And I thought the words were the devil went down in Georgia, but it was the devil went down to Georgia. But if you've been paying attention to what took place today in Georgia, and Governor Brian Kemp, who stole the election from Stacey Abrams, we see that Governor Brian Kemp signed into law a sweeping voting restriction bill that curtails the use of drop boxes and allows challenges to voting eligibility, as well as a lot of other draconian Jim Crow era pieces of the bill that were signed into law today by Brian Kemp. So we'll talk about that, and then also, now we've been talking about the House bill and the Senate bill in the Georgia State Legislature. Okay, talking about Senate bill, House Bill 231, and Senate bill House Bill 531 and Senate Bill 241. So we'll be covering that day after day here, and the also campaign from Black Voters Matter to put economic pressure on businesses, corporations that are headquartered in Georgia, like Coca-Cola, Home Depot, and others. So we've been covering that here as well. So we're going to talk about that took place today and what's next. Because as I said before, and as I have said on Roland Martin Unfiltered when I'm on Fridays, we're going to have a 50-state economic guerrilla warfare strategy. It's going to have to be a 50-state economic guerrilla warfare strategy. It's not going to be a situation where you just have economic pressure put on the headquarters of these corporations. It has to be African Americans in all 50 states and others and our allies, those that say they are our allies. This is time for you to step up to put economic pressure on these corporations in their home state, not just in the state of Georgia. What people have to understand is that there are 43 bills, there are 253 bills in 43 states that Republicans are trying to push through the state legislature. So they did devilish things in Georgia today, but they're going to do it in your state tomorrow. So this is why we have to connect the dots on all this. And this is a direct backlash to African Americans, Hispanics, Asian Americans as well, some woke white people voting in November 3rd, 2020 election, but also in the January 5th special election in Georgia. This is a direct backlash to this, or a white lash, if you will. So we're going to talk about that. Then this morning, about 7:15 a.m., I got an email about this story. I get emails all throughout the day. I monitor about 35 different news sources daily. I got an email from the Washington Post about this story. This is dealing with African American farmers. So, we've been covering the plight of African American farmers here on this show. And I've been doing that for the past few years, actually. And there, we've talked about the $5 billion that's in the $1.9 trillion COVID American Rescue Plan, and $5 billion going to African American farmers because of almost a century of racism and discrimination, especially policies coming from the U.S. Department of Agriculture being discriminated against when it came to getting government loans for their farms, etc. So we've talked about that here numerous times. Well, the newly sworn in Secretary of Agriculture, Tom Vilsack, who was the Secretary of Agriculture under the Obama administration, he says that only 0.1%, only 0.1% of Donald Trump's COVID farm relief that went to farmers, only 0.1% went to African American farmers. Now, we just talked about this a couple of days ago, 2 or 3 days ago, maybe in the Sunday show, where only a fraction of the $26 billion that Trump allocated to farmers, especially soybean farmers, because of his the trade war with China, only 1/10 of 1% of that went to African American farmers. We're going to talk about the significance of that, and then relate that to the $5 billion in the $1.9 trillion COVID relief bill that not a single traitorous Republican voted for in the House of Representatives or the U.S. Senate. Not a single traitorous Republican in the House of Representatives or the U.S. Senate voted for the $1.9 trillion COVID relief bill that will greatly help white people who keep voting for them and putting them in office. Not a single traitorous Republican voted for this, yet they want to attack the $5 billion of the $1.9 trillion to go to African American farmers for a history of racism and discrimination, but they don't want to talk about the history of racism and discrimination. They want to talk about the remedy. They want to talk about the $5 billion. They don't want to talk about how African American farmers were discriminated against from the $26 billion from the traitor-in-chief, Donald Trump. African American farmers make up 1.3% of the 3.4 million farmers in America. There are according to the U.S. Department of Agriculture, there are 3.4 million farmers in America. Approximately 45,000 African American farmers. That's 1.3%. They got 1/10 of 1% of the 26 billion from Donald Trump. And you got cowards like Lindsey Graham that then want to attack Democrats who put the $5 billion in the $1.9 trillion bill that not a single traitorous Republican voted for. And it's in the bill because of Reverend Raphael Warnock and Senator Cory Booker. They have been fighting on behalf of African American farmers. So we're going to talk about that on today's show. Also, today is the birthday of the Queen of Soul, Aretha Franklin, as well. We'll talk a little bit about Aretha Franklin. Somebody's going riding down the freeway in a pink Cadillac somewhere in America. All right, so we'll talk a little bit about the Queen of Soul as well. All right, now on the African History Network show, we focus on educating, empowering, and inspiring people of African descent throughout the diaspora and around the world, because right now it's corrects wrong behavior. What you do for yourself, what you do to yourself, and what you allow other people to do to you and get away with is based upon what you think about yourself. What you think about yourself is based upon what you have been taught about yourself. What you've been taught about yourself is based upon everything you've read, heard, and seen about yourself. So you control the radius of a man or woman's thoughts. You can control the circumference of his or her actions, because the mind can't do or teach what it doesn't know. Now, we deal with a number of different topics here on the African History Network show. We deal with current events, politics, and history, education, economic empowerment, entrepreneurship, relationships, love, sex, health issues, and much, much more. Now, a lot of this gossip BS you see, I don't deal with, right? I don't even post about it. I don't have time. I deal with like real substance. A lot of this gossip BS, Now, I did one post about Derek Jackson, not to get into the dynamics of the relationship, because I'm not in a relationship, so I'm not going to get into the dynamics of other people's relationships. What I did say was I found it interesting that he made a video with his wife talking about him cheating on his wife. Why didn't you make a video with the woman you cheated with? Or the women, or at least one of the women, but what do I know? But all this, you had a whole lot of all this gossip stuff and stuff. I don't have time to deal with that. Okay, I deal with like real substance. Okay. Now, if you want to talk about infidelity, things like that, that's understandable. But all these people want to comment on people's relationship stuff like that, and your relationship is jacked up. Well, you don't have one. I well, okay. I guess you have nothing better to talk about. But we deal with all this and a lot more on the African History Network show. Now, you can sign up for our email newsletter. Text the word Kemet, Kemet, the 22828 to sign up for our email newsletter. Also visit our website, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com. AfricanHistoryNetwork.com. Sign up for our email newsletter there. If you like this type of information, you can support the African History Network. $ the AHN show through Cash App. $ the AHN show through Cash App. Also through PayPal. PayPal.me/the AHN show. PayPal.me/the AHN show. All right. So we're going to jump into the topic here with Georgia. All right. Georgia governor signs into law sweeping voting bill that curtails the use of drop boxes and allows challenges to voting eligibility. So there's the big story from the Washington Post on this, Associated Press, NBC News as well. We're going to look at the article here from the Washington Post. And, we've been talking about this. We'll probably talk about this tomorrow on Roland Martin Unfiltered. I'm on each Friday as a panelist. You see, I've been sharing clips from Latasha Brown of Black Voters Matter as well. I need to try to get her on the show also. So this is what the devil may not have gone down to Georgia, but some devilish things did take place in Georgia. So Republican Governor Brian Kemp, who stole the election from Stacey Abrams, on Thursday, March 25th, signed into law a sweeping measure proponents said is necessary to shore up confidence in the state's election, but that critics countered will lead to longer lines, partisan control of elections, and more difficult procedures for voters trying to cast their ballots by mail. Now the problem is trying to restore short voter confidence. It was Republicans who were the ones who were sowing seeds of doubt in the election, led by the traitor-in-chief, Donald Trump. It was Republicans that talked about a stolen election, but there's no evidence of a stolen election. It's Republicans who filed 61 lawsuits in court. Most of them are thrown out. They lost all of them except one. The one that they won was in Pennsylvania, and that dealt with how far poll watchers could be from poll workers. Okay, we'll deal with this on the other side of the break. You listen to the African History Network show right here on 910 AM Superstation Future Radio. I'm Michael M. Hotep. We'll be back in a few minutes. Stand by, everybody. How's everybody doing? Share this broadcast on your social media platforms. Invite your friends to tune in also. How's everybody doing? All right, everybody, share this broadcast. Let's see who we have here. Stand by. Stand by, everybody. What's her name? All right, we're back from break in 2 minutes. Okay, everybody. Let's see. We have Gregory. We have John. Welcome back to the African History Network show right here on the 10 a.m. Superstation. Brother Michael M. Hotep. It is Wednesday. It's Thursday. I'm sorry. Thursday, March 25th, 2021. And we are live. Hope everybody's doing well. Everybody share this broadcasting on social media platforms. Invite your friends to tune in. Also, we're broadcasting on our Facebook fan page, The African History Network, The African History Network. Also on our YouTube channel, Michael M. Hotep, IMHOTEP, on YouTube as well. All right. Okay. So right before the break, I was talking about what took place in Georgia today. Charlie Daniels had the song "The Devil Went Down to Georgia." Well, we know some devilish things happened in Georgia today. Okay. And this is an article here from Atlanta Journal-Constitution. This is dealing with State Representative Park Cannon, Georgia representative arrested after governor signs elections bill. Georgia State, I think it's Georgia State Troopers Georgia State Troopers arrested her. State Representative Park Cannon, Democrat from Atlanta, is placed into back of Georgia State Capitol Patrol car after being arrested by Georgia State Troopers on day 38 of the legislative session of the Georgia State Capitol building. They arrested Park Cannon on Thursday as she knocked on Governor Brian Kemp's door, interrupting his live streamed announcement that he had signed a draconian Jim Crow era election bill into law. All right. We'll talk about this as well. Okay. So they arrested this sister. Okay. This is the South. See, this is I told people during the November election that this was not going to be over. I said we have to understand that after the election, that's the end of one process and the beginning of another one. The other one is one, holding elected officials accountable and and continuing to push your initiatives, push them through the legislature, House Representatives, Senate, et cetera, getting them signed into law, but also protecting the advancements that you made, protecting the gains that you made, because there are always people coming trying to take you back. They're always trying to reverse what you did. So you have to understand offense and defense. You have to play both of them at the same time. This is an example of this. I knew this was coming. Okay, because all you have to do is go back. You didn't have to go back to the compromise of 1877. You didn't have to go back to the Lily White movement in 1928, which was the effort to push African Americans out of the Republican Party. So all these dumbasses here, most of these black conservatives running around, Candace Owens and Bruce Lavelle and Pastor Darrell Scott, a lot of these black conservatives that you hear, James C. Harris, things like that, they want to talk about the Democratic plantation. They don't talk about the effort of Republicans to push African Americans out of the Republican Party, which is why African Americans went to the Democratic Party in the first place, because they don't study history. They don't want to talk about the Lily White movement in 1928 and Herbert Hoover. This is how I can listen to them tell they don't know what the hell they're talking about. So let's look at this article here from Washington Post. Call-in number is 313-778-7600. 313-778-7600 is the call-in number if you have a question or comment. We're going to go to the clip from Joy Reid in just a second. The readout, Shakita. I'm going to get Lakeisha from Shakita. Okay. Shakita. All right. We'll go to that in just a second. Okay. So let's look at this here from Washington Post. Georgia governor signs into law. Let's see here. Georgia governor signs into law sweeping voting bill that curtails the use of drop boxes and imposes new ID requirements for mail voting. Now, once again, the mail-in voting, the no excuse absentee mail-in voting law that exists in Georgia was passed in 2005 by Republicans. It was passed in 2005 by Republicans in Georgia. Republicans have been using that law for 15 years to get Republicans elected. In 2020, African Americans learned about that law. Stacey Abrams educated us. Latasha Brown educated us. Cliff Albright educated us. Nsé Ufah educated us. Then we used it and defeated 2 Republican senators in the U.S. Senate and got Joe Biden elected. Now the same Republicans now want to change the law that they've been using for 15 years to their advantage because we learned the law and beat them at their own game. Now they want to change it. So let's look at this here. Let's go back to this one. Okay, so the measure is one of the first. The measure is one of the first major voting bills to pass, as dozens of state legislatures consider restrictions on how ballots are cast and counted in the aftermath of the 2020 presidential election. When Donald Trump attacked without evidence, the integrity of the election results in 6 states he lost, including Georgia. Okay, claiming widespread voter fraud, provided no evidence of widespread voter fraud. And when they went to court, in most of these cases in court, this is why you actually have to read the court filings. Most of these cases in court, they weren't alleging widespread voter fraud because they didn't want to be charged with perjury. They didn't want to perjure themselves when they went to court. The attorneys, they didn't want to perjure themselves when they went to court. They didn't want to be disbarred. So they talked about voting irregularities, things like this, but they did not allege, in most of these court filings, they did not allege widespread voter fraud. Because 1, it didn't exist. 2, they don't have any evidence of it. So the new law imposes new identification requirements for those casting ballots by mail, curtails the use of drop boxes for absentee ballots, allows electors to challenge the eligibility of an unlimited number of voters, and requires counties to hold hearings on such challenges within 10 days. It makes it a crime for third-party groups to hand out food and water to voters standing in line. Okay, now see, this will criminalize Latasha Brown's group, Black Voters Matter. And see, you have to understand what happened. Because of some of the policies put in place in Georgia, this added to longer lines in certain areas when people went to vote. So you had groups like Black Voters Matter that handed out water to people standing in line and handed out food. Now, they didn't ask them who they were voting for. They didn't ask them their party affiliation. They offered it to anybody standing in line. So now they want to criminalize that. Now Republicans want to criminalize handing out food to water to people who are standing in line, especially in long lines to vote. Once again, you have to understand, see, instead of Republicans coming with better policies to appeal to African Americans and Hispanics and Asian Americans and younger white people and different things like this, instead of them coming with better policies, they want to restrict more who can vote so they can win more elections. So this bill signed by Brian Kemp, who stole an election from Stacey Abrams, also makes it a crime for third-party groups to hand out food and water to voters standing in line. It blocks the use of mobile voting vans, as Fulton County did last year after purchasing 2 vehicles at a cost of more than $700,000. Okay? And it prevents local governments from directly accepting grants from the private sector. Now, I want to go to this clip here from the readout. Joy Reid. This is from March 25th, 2021. Joy Reid spoke with Latasha Brown from Black Voters Matter. Joy Reid on the new voting restrictions in Georgia. Republicans want to make it torture for you to vote. Let's go to this clip, Shakita.
State Representative Park Cannon tried to get in where Kemp was signing the bill and was actually arrested as Kemp signed this bill in secret. Your thoughts on all of that?
They are out of control. All that Representative Cannon is doing is going in, attempting to go in while he signed the bill. She's a representative. She was duly elected in this state. They are absolutely out of control. They have lost their minds. What we're seeing happening in the state of Georgia is so egregious around voting rights. What we're seeing is the resurgence of those that think that they're going to bring Jim Crow back, and they're not. And so what you're seeing, even with this bill, to make it illegal and criminalize groups like ours that provide water and snacks for people who are standing in line for 3, 4, 5, 6, even 11 hours, it is a shame. We should be ashamed. We should hang our heads tonight to say that this is a democracy.
It's hard for me to understand making it illegal to provide food and snacks to people standing in line. What is the explanation for that? Is the idea here that they want people to be hungry and thirsty and be so abused physically that they get out of line? Is that the goal here? I don't get it.
The explanation is anything that would deter Black voters. This is not what we saw in these bills that happened. No, this was in response to the historic Black turnout that happened this last election cycle. Instead of really addressing the issues to prevent people from standing in lines for hours, instead of expanding access, bringing more machines online, strengthening the process, they're doing absolutely the opposite. Everything in their power to actually deter voters from participating in the process. Brian Kemp has been voter suppression and cheat. He's sits in his office right now because he cheated and suppressed the vote in 2018. But just as he came out in greater force in 2020, we're going to do that again. And we're going to remember this as opposed to it's not over yet.
Let me read Stacey Abrams' statement. She put out a statement saying Georgia Republicans' shameful effort to suppress the vote and seize electoral power through SB 202 demonstrate how critical the fight is for voting rights remains. Every business, political, and civic leader must stand up and make their opposition to these desperate anti-democratic laws clear. As the FBI continue to round up seditionists who spilled blood to defend a lie about our elections, Republican state leaders willfully undermine democracy by giving themselves authority to overturn results they do not like. Now more than ever, Americans must demand federal action to protect voting rights as we continue to fight against these blatantly unconstitutional efforts that are nothing less than Jim Crow. She's referring in part of this, Latasha, to a part of the bill that would essentially allow the state legislature to overturn elections. They want to allow the Republican legislature, if they don't like the results of the next presidential election, to simply hand the election to the person they prefer. I was at the Tyler Perry studio opening, and one of the other people who was there in Atlanta was the governor, Brian Kemp, who stood around there as if he was some sort of an ally to the film community and to the African-American community. You have started a campaign to pressure businesses, corporations, companies that are based in Georgia to get on the right side of history regarding these kinds of laws. Do you believe that a boycott of Georgia is in order now that Brian Kemp has signed this law?
I absolutely do. I think that all things should be considered on the table. The bottom line is just 56 years ago, there were Black people in this country from my native city of Selma that died for the right to vote. It's one thing to say that we have policy differences and for people to see different aspects of policy, but the fundamental access to the ballot, that is a right that is guaranteed. And so what we're seeing is Republicans not only be racist, but be anti-democratic. And then there are companies that all of these companies, so we're looking at the Metro Atlanta Chamber that came out with a watered down, very disrespectful, I think, statement today. It's that represent companies like Delta and Home Depot and Delta Airlines, Home Depot, and Coca-Cola, like they said that they make these statements around racial equity. This should be low-hanging fruit. This is a clear issue that is targeted at Black voters to marginalize our vote and really be able to weaken democracy. And so we've launched a campaign just this evening, right before I came on the air. There's a coalition of folks that are at the airport that are protesting Delta Airlines right now, saying you are a homegrown organization, a business that we serve. You have more Black workers than any other airlines. How dare you not stand with us to make sure that we fight and protect voting rights in the state of Georgia?
Yeah, I mean, dollars are also a powerful tool. And the film industry in Georgia, let's just be clear, it is the new Hollywood. It is a multi-billion-dollar industry where film and TV is being done there. And the people who live there and are resident there, it's being made harder for them to actually vote. to change the government in Georgia. The Brennan Center has has counted 253 proposed voting restrictions in 43 states that are similar to what Brian Kemp did. This is now on a national scale, Latasha. What can be done? Because you have some recalcitrants in the United States Senate, people like Joe Manchin and Kristen Sinema. What can be done? Because this is not going to stop at Georgia. This is going to be everywhere Republicans have legislative control.
This is a national movement. This is really a question around democracy. This is a question around, are we going to go backwards or are we going to move forward? That Georgia showed up for America. We expect that America will stand and show up for us as well and all voters in this country. And so we need to immediately pass H.R. 1, H.R. 4. We literally need to have stronger federal legislation that is going to put the teeth back into the Voting Rights Act. We need to make sure that we're expanding so that these states that are actually passing these draconian laws, that they're held accountable. And we're also going to go to the court system. You know, it is a shame that we're in this space that we're in right now. If we're talking about America as a democracy, then we have to make it do so.
Let's just be clear for everybody who's watching this right now. What Republicans are saying is they're going to make it torture for you to vote in line by having fewer machines, beat up machines, places where in urban centers, places where black folks live, suburbs where black people live, make it impossible or torture for you to vote in line. And then they're going to make it impossible for you to vote by mail. They're going to lock off every way that you can vote. And then even if you survive all of those restrictions and you finally get your vote in, then they're going to say, ways out. We're just not going to count what you did because we don't like who you voted for, so we're just going to give it to the other guy. This is the end of democracy in America. This is the beginning of the South Africa strategy. This is minority rule. This is saying we will rule over the objections of the majority of the American people. This is the most serious thing that we've seen happen since the January 6th siege. It's another kind of siege. It is absolutely bizarre, and it is, I will say it's un-American. It's probably kind of in a way. It's old school American. It's Jim Crow American. Latasha Brown was in this. No doubt about that. Latasha Brown, thank you for being in this.
All right. So that is from the readout. Joy Reid, MSNBC, March 25th, 2021. Joy Reid on new voting restrictions in Georgia. Republicans want to make it torture for you to vote. So we'll post a link here for that. I'm on Latasha Brown's Twitter page right now, so follow her on Twitter. Looking at this tweet here, this is not over. Voter suppression would never be acceptable because they're protesting. They were protesting outside of Delta Airlines. And more than just protesting outside of Delta Airlines, we need to stop flying on Delta until they straighten up and fly right. We need to stop flying on Delta Airlines. I'm telling you right now, there has to be a 50-state strategy of all-out economic guerrilla warfare. Dr. King, April 3rd, 1968, in his last speech, I've been to the mountaintop, and the speech is about 43 minutes. People need to listen to the entire speeches on YouTube. I've written a 7-page article dealing with why did Dr. King tell us to redistribute the pain, understanding the power of economic withdrawal. He said we have to always anchor our external direct action with the power of economic withdrawal. We have to always anchor our external direct action with the power of economic withdrawal, which means when you have mass protests like you have going on in Georgia, you have to have economic withdrawal to redistribute the pain, to those inflicting pain upon you, so you can push your agenda. If you go back and you look at, and we talked about this before, if you go back and look at the transgender bathroom bills in Indiana and North Carolina, when that happened, corporations spoke out and they put pressure. If you just look at the one in Indiana, okay, we got to go back and look at what happened and go to those same corporations, because some of those same corporations spoke out and put statements out during the protests in June and July of 2020 surrounding the killing of George Floyd and Black Lives Matter protests. And they're donating money here and there, right? Some of these same corporations also finance and make donations to Republicans who are doing us harm, who are trying to pass these laws, not just in Georgia, but that 43 state legislatures across the country, 253 bills being pushed by Republicans. So we have to understand the concept of redistributing the pain and having nationwide economic boycotts against certain corporations to push our agenda. We have to leverage our economics to enforce our politics. If we look at this article quickly here, and the calling number is 313-778-7600. If you have a quick question or comment, 313-778-7600. If you have a quick question or comment. If we look at this article, this is from September 14th, 2016. Because when you look at how corporations came out quickly to denounce the Indiana transgender bathroom bill, and then they were threatening to cancel conferences in the state of Indiana. They were threatening to stop projects that they had going on there, things like this, until those laws were changed. When you go and study this, because I was reporting on this as it was happening. When you go and look at what happened after they passed that bill in Indiana, all this economic pressure came from corporations. Within 1 week, they had passed a new bill through the Indiana state legislature. And at the time, the governor had to come out and do another press conference and announce that he was signing the new bill in the law that reversed the old bill. And that governor's name was Mike Pence. Because Mike Pence was the governor of Indiana before he became vice president. Okay? So now this dumbass right here, who don't even have a real name, what Biden going to do for y'all? You're not even paying attention, dumbass. Biden has been speaking out against this, but this is in the state legislatures, dumbass. Now, this is also, if you watch the press conference today, that Biden did, they're talking about getting HR 1 passed, which is at the federal level. Now, to do that, and there's more talk now about changing the filibuster. So you should do some research before you post it. This ain't one of these other shows you used to watching. All right. So this is what happens when you come here and don't do research and run your mouth. This is what happens. Let's see. Let's block this dumbass right here. See, this is what happens when you come, you troll here, you get lit up. All right, let's continue. All right, I want to show you this article here from Newsweek.com. Now, this is from September 2015, okay, from Newsweek. And let's go back to this one here. All right, a comprehensive timeline of public figures boycotting North Carolina over the HB2 bathroom bill. Now, this deals with North Carolina. There was one in Indiana and one in North Carolina. Corporations came out in opposition to both of them. But study the one in Indiana because they reversed that law in a week. The NCAA on Monday evening announced plans to move 7 2016-2017 championship events out of North Carolina due to the state's controversial HB2 bathroom bill. 3 of these 7 championships are Division I events, including part of the first 2 rounds of March Madness. Now, has the NCAA put out any statement? I'm not saying they had games in Georgia, but have they put out any statement in opposition to this? Let me do a quick Google check. And because I haven't heard anything. So you had the NCAA, and they're threatening to move games. You had celebrities who came out. Yeah, I don't see anything from the NCAA even putting out a statement. I'm not even saying cancel games. I'm talking about putting out a statement in opposition to this. All right, so due to the state's controversial HB2 bathroom bill, 3 of these 7 championships are Division I events. All right, quote, fairness is about more than the opportunity to participate in college sports or even compete for championships, said NCAA President Mark Emmert. Okay, now has the president and the NCAA even put out a statement in opposition to what's going on in Georgia or any other state? Because this is taking place in 43 states. Georgia is ground zero. Georgia is the first state to actually pass the bills and get it signed into law. But they're coming to a state near you. If it's not your state, it's going to be one next door. Quote, we believe in providing a safe and respectful environment at our events and are committed to providing the best experience possible for college athletes, fans, and everyone taking part in our championships. So then they go through and they do a timeline. Only a day after Pat McCrory signed HB2 into state law, this was the transgender bathroom bill in North Carolina, HB2. Only a day after Governor Pat McCrory signed HB2 into state law, production studio Lionsgate tells employees that it will no longer be filming the pilot for the Hulu series Crushed in Charlotte. Now, have you heard, maybe I missed it, have you heard of any studios, not Tyler Perry, besides Tyler Perry, okay, have you heard of any studios saying, if you sign this bill, we're going to stop filming in the state of Georgia? Maybe I missed it. Let me know. Maybe they'll come out after today. I haven't heard anything. Production had been scheduled to begin in April when filming to commence in May. Now, this is back in 2016. Lionsgate said HB2 is, quote, deplorable and discriminatory. Now, has Lionsgate or any studio, big studio like this, have they put out a statement denouncing Senate Bill 202 in Georgia, or Senate Bill HB 531, or Senate Bill 241? You know, I'm just seeing a stark difference in the approach when it came to transgendered people being able to use the bathroom of their choice, and voter restriction bills, especially targeting African Americans. I'm just seeing the stark difference in the way corporations and all this are handling this. Let's go back to the one, and we're gonna go. I'm gonna go to the clip from dealing with Lindsey Graham in just a second, Shakita. We're gonna try to squeeze that in here because this ties into the African American farmers. All this is connected. All of this is connected. Okay. Also, if you all like this type of information as well, you can support the African History Network, $ the AHN Show through Cash App, $ the AHN Show through Cash App, or through PayPal, paypal.me/the AHN Show, paypal.me/the AHN Show, or at our website, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com. Dumbass trolls, you can donate also. You part of that $1,400 stimulus check that you got because African Americans went out and voted, Hispanics went out and voted and put Democrats in control while you running your damn mouth. Use some of that $1,400 stimulus check. You can donate to the African History Network also. All right. Let's continue. Also, the tax credit you got for your children, that helps you out too. Okay, so Fulton County is the county that Atlanta's in. See, they're definitely targeting African Americans with this as well. So let's hold on. Let me flip back over here to Washington Post. Just a second here. Okay. All right. So we see they're doing a number of things with this bill, SB 202. It makes it a crime for third-party groups to hand out food and water to voters standing in line, blocks the use of mobile voting vans, okay, as Fulton County did last year after purchasing 2 vehicles at a cost of more than $700,000. Fulton County is the county that Atlanta's in. And it prevents local governments from directly accepting grants from the private sector, okay? Now, the 95-page law also strips authority from the Secretary of State, making him a non-voting member of the state election board, and allows lawmakers to initiate takeovers of local election boards. Okay. Now, Raffensperger is a Republican. He is the Secretary of State. You have Republicans mad at him because he didn't find 11,700 and whatever it was, 81 votes, whatever it was, to help Donald Trump win. Okay. He said there was no widespread voter fraud, which was correct. There wasn't. But this right here, a lot of people are not focusing on this, and allows lawmakers to initiate takeovers of local election boards. It allows the state election board to take over local election boards if there is an election and they don't like the results of it. It allows the state election board to come over and take over local election boards and possibly overturn election results. Now, what a lot of people are not realizing is that Mayor Keisha Lance Bottoms of Atlanta is up for re-election in 2022. This law that they just passed in Georgia, and Charlie Daniels said the devil went down to Georgia. I say something devilish went down in Georgia. This allows the state election board to take over local election boards like in Fulton County and overturn election results that they don't like. So, see, this is why we have to understand after the election, it's a different phase of the fight that takes place. Now, measures that critics said could allow partisan appointees to slow down or block election certification or target heavily Democratic jurisdictions, many of which are in the Atlanta area, and are home to the state's highest concentrations of Black and brown voters. I'll be damned. How'd they figure that out? So, do you think this is by coincidence? But let's look at this. The 95-page law also strips authority from the Secretary of State, making him a non-voting member of the state election board, and allows lawmakers to initiate takeovers of local election boards, measures that critics say could allow partisan appointees to slow down or block election certification or target heavily Democratic jurisdictions, many of which are in Atlanta, are in the Atlanta area and home to the state's highest concentration of Black and brown voters. All right. Okay. So we're out of time here on 910 AM, the Superstation WFDF. We're going to continue this on our social media platforms, our Facebook fan page, The African History Network, our YouTube channel, Michael Imhotep. If you're watching there, keep watching. We're going to keep broadcasting for a little while longer. Remember, right now it's correct. Wrong behavior is not over till we win. Wakanda forever. Stay tuned for Democracy Now! Talk to you tomorrow night. Peace. Okay, stand by. All right, stand by. All right, how's everybody doing? We got Patty. We've got Ed. K-Dot. Who are the trolls? Let me know. I'll block the trolls. Who are the trolls? So what you should be doing is asking, why are Republicans in 43 states trying to pass these draconian laws as opposed to coming out with better policies to appeal to African Americans? That's what you should do. But you're afraid to confront white supremacy and racism. That's the question you should ask. All right. Okay, so everybody share this broadcast to your social media platforms. We're going to continue here. African American business owners, post the name of your business here on the thread of the broadcast. Email us at customer service at AfricanHistoryNetwork.com. Customer service at AfricanHistoryNetwork.com. and we'll let you know how you can advertise with the African History Network. Now, Democrats are have about 700 proposed bills in state legislatures across the country to make it easier to vote. But all those state legislatures they don't control. Republicans control more state legislatures than Democrats do. So in the state legislatures that Republicans control, and if they have a Republican governor, it's a good chance those bills will pass unless there's some type of pressure, economic pressure from corporations. Corporations can come in and stop this because they finance a lot of these Republicans. So they could come in and say, look, we don't want you to pass this bill. Otherwise, we're going to stop financing you, and we want our money back. We want our money back for the donations that we gave you. It's going to take a 50-state strategy. Okay, it's going to take a 50-state strategy and economic pressure on corporations all across the country. Because see, here's what happens. This is what people have to understand. If it's just African Americans or just people in Georgia putting pressure on Coca-Cola and Delta Airlines and Aflac and Southern Company and UPS, a lot of these corporations can withstand an attack in just one state, not in all 50 states, not economic withdrawal in all 50 states. They can't withstand that. So that's why when you go after corporations, it can't just be in one state. It's people around the country targeting these corporations. That's where your strength is. Your strength is on the national basis, not local or at the state level. Not local. It's on the national basis. That's where our strength is. All right. Yes, a plan for other states. That's what I'm saying. There's 43 states. Georgia is ground zero. Georgia is the first one to get the bill passed through the state legislature and get it signed into law by a governor. It's coming to other states. It's in state legislatures now. This is what I've been talking about past 3 weeks. 3, maybe 4 weeks now. All right. Okay, the Republicans interested in ruling people by any means necessary. So this ties into the fear of the browning of America and Republicans trying to hold on to power by any means necessary because they see that the Republican Party is not a party that is growing. It's a party that's shrinking. The other thing is that white people have a negative birth rate in 26 states out of 50. That's not me. That's the U.S. Census Bureau, June of 2018. The Republican Party is overwhelmingly white and older. So they're dying out. They have a shrinking party. So and they see a growing number of non-white people in this country. So they're trying to hold on to power as long as they can. This is what's taking place. If you look at the article here from, let me try this. I'm in Google Chrome, and I finally switched over all my thousands of bookmarks from Firefox. Let me see. There was an article from New York Times. There's an article from the New York Times called More Births Than Deaths. Why is this freezing up? Hold on just a second. Let me pull this article here from the New York Times. There was an article from the New York Times from 2018 called more births than deaths, something like that. And it deals with how white people have a negative birth rate in 26 states out of 50. I'll pull this up here. I think it's called fewer births than deaths. Okay, I'll try to pull this up. Yeah, fewer births than deaths in majority U.S. cities. Let's look at this here. This is from New York Times from June 2018. Fewer births than deaths among whites in majority of U.S. states. Fewer births than deaths among whites in majority of U.S. states. This is from June 20th, 2018. Deaths now outnumber births among white people in more than half of the states in the country, demographers have found, signaling what could be a faster than expected transition to a future in which whites are no longer a majority of the American population. Okay, now this is not me saying this. This is the U.S. Census Bureau. The Census Bureau has projected that whites could drop below 50% of the population around 2045. Okay, now it's 2043. A relatively slow moving change that has been years in the making. But a new report this week in June of 2018, a new report found that whites are dying faster than they are being born. Okay, found that whites are dying faster than they are being born. Now in 26 states, up from 17 states just 2 years earlier. And demographers say the shift might come even sooner. So I read the memo from the census, U.S. Census, when it came out in June 2018, and there were other outlets that carried this story. Okay, white people have a negative birth rate in 26 states out of 50, and it's continuing. It's continuing to go faster. So this is the fear of the browning of America. All right, now let's go back to the Washington Post, and I get to the story about the black farmers, so we can get out of here. All right, so let's go back to Georgia. Okay, so state election boards and allow lawmakers to initiate takeovers of local election boards, measures that critics say could allow partisan appointees to slow down or block election certification or target heavily Democratic jurisdictions, many of which are in the Atlanta area and are home to the state's highest concentration of black and brown voters. The measure, backed by Republicans, sailed out of the state House and Senate on party line votes in a single afternoon. Okay. Hey Sharon, thanks a lot for the donation, Sharon. Really appreciate that. Governor Brian Kemp signed it shortly afterward. Okay, saying at a news conference that with the new law, quote, Georgia will take another step toward ensuring our elections are secure, accessible, and fair. How are you ensuring it? How are you ensuring that they are fair when you're trying to restrict who actually gets to vote? Quote, contrary to the hyper-partisan rhetoric you may hear inside and outside the Gold Dome, the facts are that this new law will expand voting access in the Peach State. Okay, he's lying. The governor went on to say, noting that every county in Georgia will now have expanded early voting on the weekends. Yeah, but what else are you doing? But Democrats and voting rights advocates condemn the bill as a flagrant effort to make it harder for some voters to cast their ballots, particularly those in larger minority-heavy counties that have a long history of insufficient polling locations and long lines. See, he doesn't want to deal with a lack of polling locations and long lines. Brian Kemp doesn't want to deal with that. He probably doesn't also want to talk about like when he purged like 200,000 voters from the voting rolls, things like that. They don't want to deal with stuff like that. Quote, it is like the Christmas tree of goodies in terms of voter suppression, said Senator Jen Jordan, a Democrat, said on the Senate floor Thursday. Quote, we want to provide opportunities for people to vote, she said, echoing Republican descriptions of the measure. This bill is absolutely about opportunities, but it ain't about the opportunity to vote. It's about the opportunity to keep control and keep power at any cost. Republicans are trying to maintain power, raw naked power, by any means necessary, period. Here is a picture of State Representative Park Cannon, Democrat from Atlanta, State Representative of Georgia, being arrested. Late Thursday, Democratic State Representative Park Cannon was arrested by state troopers as she knocked on the governor's door to observe the bill signing, cutting short Governor Brian Kemp's news conference, a moment captured by others at the Capitol in videos posted on social media. In 43 states across the country, GOP lawmakers have proposed at least 250 bills that would limit mail, early in-person, and election day voting, with such constraints as stricter ID requirements, limited hours, or narrower eligibility to vote absentee, according to data compiled as of February 19th by the nonpartisan Brennan Center for Justice. There's actually 253 bills as of when they compiled it in February 19th. 253 bills in 43 state legislatures. Even more proposals have been introduced since February 19th. In Iowa, Governor Kim Reynolds signed a voting law earlier this month that reduces early and election day voting hours and moves up the deadline for mail ballots to arrive at local election offices. President Joe Biden on Thursday blasted efforts by Republican-led state legislatures across the country to restrict voting rights, saying he was worried about, quote, how un-American this whole initiative is, end quote. He said this makes Jim Crow look like Jim Eagle. Biden said, emphasizing he would do everything in my power to pass legislation to protect voting rights. So HR 1 has to pass the Senate. It's already passed the House of Representatives, has to pass the Senate, but you're going to have to change the filibuster rule to get it passed, because you don't have 60 votes in the Senate to pass it. Because you need Republicans to pass it if you have 60 votes, and you need Joe Manchin to pass it to get 50 votes to get a tiebreaker with Senator Kamala Harris, Joe Manchin of West Virginia, who is who is a very conservative Democrat. Now, Joe Manchin is in West Virginia. West Virginia is a state, it's a red state. Donald Trump won West Virginia in 2016 by 40 points. I was listening to the Reverend Al Sharpton show today because he's on the same radio station I'm on, 910 AM Superstation WFDF here in Detroit. And somebody called in to Reverend Al Sharpton's show and said, why doesn't Joe Manchin just go ahead and become a Republican? Why doesn't he just switch over and become a Republican? Okay, now that may sound good. Okay. That may sound good, but what I don't think people realize is that if Joe Manchin switches over, changes parties, and becomes a Republican, then that means that Senator Mitch McConnell becomes Senate Majority Leader again, and Republicans will be back in control of the Senate. And it'll be 51 Republicans, 49 Democrats. If Joe Manchin switches political parties and becomes a Republican, that's not something you want to happen. So a lot of times people say things, but don't understand the consequences of it. That's not something you want to happen. If Joe Manchin switches political parties and becomes a Republican, Mitch McConnell's back in control of the Senate. Republicans will be in control of every committee in the Senate. It would mean Mitch McConnell will control which bills come to the Senate floor for a debate and which bills get voted on, as opposed to Chuck Schumer. So a lot of times people say stuff that may sound good in their head, but they don't understand the consequences of it. All right, let's continue here. Let's see here. All right, read the rest of this one here. During the Senate debate in Georgia on Thursday, Senator Gloria Butler, a Black Democrat who represents suburban Atlanta, called the measure, quote, an unabashed assault on voting rights unlike anything we've seen since the Jim Crow era. All right, so read this article from the Washington Post. Georgia signs into law sweeping voting bill that curtails the use of drop boxes and imposes new ID requirements for mail voting. There's also one from the Associated Press. We'll talk about this some more on tomorrow's show. It's one from the Associated Press. Georgia Governor Kemp signs a GOP election bill amid an outcry. Okay. It's from March 25th, 2021. And this one from the Atlanta Journal-Constitution. Let's see. Hold on. Let's go to the one from Associated Press. Okay, this one here from Associated Press. Georgia Governor Kemp signs GOP election bill amid an outcry. Then we have the one from Atlanta Journal-Constitution also. There's one I was looking at as well from NBC News, NBCnews.com. All right, I want to squeeze in this last story here. This is dealing with African-American farmers. And this is huge. Okay. Yeah, I don't think Joe Manchin is switching, but somebody called in the Reverend Sharpton show today and said Joe Manchin should just go ahead and switch to the Republican Party. Joe Manchin has more power as a Democrat as the 50th vote. It's like the swing vote. He has more power as a Democrat than as a Republican. But a lot of times people say these things and don't understand the consequences of what they're saying. Okay, so early this morning, I got an email about a story. It's about an interview with Tom Vilsack, the new Agriculture Secretary. for the U.S. Department of Agriculture. And Agriculture Secretary Tom Vilsack says only 0.1% of Trump administration's COVID farm relief went to black farmers. Okay. Only 0.1%, 1/10 of 1% went to black farmers. So this was a Q&A with the new Secretary of Agriculture about how the American Rescue Plan's USDA portion will be spent. Okay, now, you know, we've talked about this before. We've talked about African-American farmers. We talked about the $1.9 trillion in the COVID relief bill. And we talked about the $10.4 billion going to farmers, 3.5 billion of that going to African-American farmers. We dealt with all that here on the show. I also want to go to this clip. So you remember we talked about how Lindsey Graham was attacking this provision in the bill that would give $5 billion to African-American farmers because of almost a century of racism and discrimination when it came to policies in the U.S. Department of Agriculture and getting loans for their farms, things like this, right? You remember me talking about that. So if we look here quickly here at this article from the Washington Post, a tiny fraction of the Trump administration's coronavirus relief for American farmers, just 0.1% of the overall package, went to black farmers, according to Agriculture Secretary Tom Vilsack, who was confirmed in February 2021 with strong bipartisan support for a second stint in the role. Now, he was the Secretary of Agriculture under the Obama administration as well. In an interview with the Washington Post, Tom Vilsack, for the first time, noted the extent to which the Trump administration's response to the coronavirus pandemic exacerbated existing disparities across the American economy. This is an example of how elections have consequences. This is an example of understanding how politics is the legal distribution of scarce wealth, power, and resources, and the writing of laws, statutes, ordinances, amendments, and treaties, their adoption, interpretation, and enforcement. Politics impacts every aspect of our lives, from the water we drink to the air we breathe to the food we eat. Okay. And even those that say they preach economic empowerment, and some of them I question that, but even those that say they preach economic empowerment, all right, your economic empowerment is not immune to politics. Your economic empowerment relies upon policies that shape the economy. Your economic empowerment relies upon having a healthy economy and having people who are employed so they can spend money with your business so you can preach your economic empowerment. So in 2016, there were people saying, oh, we don't need to vote. We just need to do economic empowerment, invest in the stock market, and do like the Asians do and whatever the hell they were saying. What they should have said is we need to elect a president whose policies are going to protect the economy that our African-American businesses depend upon. And we need to elect a Congress to pass policies to protect an economy that our African-American businesses depend upon. So if you look at the article from Forbes, and you've heard me talk about this a number of times, and they look at the New York Federal Reserve, the impact that coronavirus has had on African-American businesses, we see that 41% of African-American businesses have gone out of business since April of 2020. Okay. 41% of African-American businesses have gone out of business since April of 2020. I would argue it's at least 50% now. Hell, that's April. That was a year ago. Okay. So if we look at this article here from Forbes, the the COVID-19 crisis has wiped out nearly half of small black businesses. The COVID-19 crisis has wiped out nearly half of small black businesses. Well, the main reason why the coronavirus pandemic hit America so hard is because you had incompetent leadership at 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue. That's the main reason. If you had somebody responsible, you wouldn't have over 500,000 people dead. You wouldn't the impact that it had on the economy, the millions of people unemployed and things like this, and it's still like 9 or 10 million still collecting some type of unemployment insurance. It would not have been nearly as bad if you had somebody who followed the science, took proactive steps, didn't think it was a hoax, didn't think they knew more than the scientists and the doctors. So if we look at this one here from Forbes, let's see. The COVID-19 crisis has wiped out nearly half of black small businesses. Now, this is from August 10th, 2020, when this article came out, but they're looking at information for April 2020. Nearly half of black small businesses have been wiped out by the end of April as the pandemic ravaged minority communities disproportionately, according to a report from the New York Federal Reserve. The New York Federal Reserve. Black-owned businesses were more than twice as likely to shutter or shut down as their white counterparts, the report found. Nationally, representative data on small businesses indicate that the number of active business owners fell by 22% from February to April 2020, the largest drop on record. Black businesses experienced the most acute decline, with a 41% drop. Latino businesses fell by 32%, and Asian businesses dropped by 26%. Okay? So all the people say we're going to do like the Asians do. Well, you mean shut your business down? That figure has likely increased substantially as the pandemic has dragged on with a resurgence of cases this summer that has taken the country's number of infections to a world record of over 5 million. Well, hell, this is much more than that now. This article is from August of 2020. I would argue it's at least 50% of black-owned businesses that have shut down and gone out of business since then. So, now, maybe 60%, tell you the truth. So read that from Forbes. Okay, so let's look at this here from Washington Post dealing with African American farmers. I'm gonna go back to this article, but all of this is connected. This is why politics is the legal distribution of scarce wealth, power, and resources. This is why the people say, "Oh, well, we're not gonna vote at the top of the ticket. We're just gonna vote down ballot." Don't you realize what happens at the federal level impacts what happens at the state and local level? Annual federal budget is $5 trillion plus. Money comes from federal to state to county to city. Policies, U.S. Department of Agriculture, Environmental Protection Agency, Department of Education, Small Business Administration, all that impacts at the local level. Let's look at how the U.S. Department of Agriculture impacts African American farmers. In an interview with the Washington Post, Tom Vilsack, the new Secretary of Agriculture, for the first time noted the extent to which the Trump administration's response to the coronavirus pandemic exacerbated existing disparities across the American economy. The distribution of coronavirus relief increased those gaps, he said. Of those who identified their race or ethnicity, Black farmers received only $20.8 million of nearly $26 billion. 26 billion with a B. African American farmers received only $20.8 million of nearly $26 billion in 2 rounds of payments under the coronavirus food assistance program announced by Donald Trump, by the Trump administration, late April. That would be late April 2020. This is an example of how politics is the legal distribution of scarce wealth, power, and resources, and the writing of laws, statutes, ordinances, amendments, and treaties, their adoption, interpretation, and enforcement. Politics, laws, and policies impact your business and the economy your business operates within. The reason why the Trump administration had to do the $26 billion in payments to farmers was because of Trump's trade war that he engaged in with China. That's policy, which impacts you at the local level. We saw 99% of the money going to white farmers and 1% going to socially disadvantaged farmers. And if you break that down to how much went to black farmers, it's 0.1%. That's 1/10 of 1%. He said, look at it another way. The top 10% of farmers in the country receive 60% of the value of the COVID payments. And the bottom 10% of farmers in the country receive 0.26%. Okay? That's 0.2%. Politics is the legal distribution of scarce wealth, power, and resources. So of the 3.4 million farmers in the United States, only 45,000 are African Americans, or 1.3%. 1.3% of the 3.4 million farmers in America are African American farmers. This is according to the U.S. Department of Agriculture. That's down from 1 million African American farmers a century ago because of widespread land loss. African American farmers have lost 92% of their land, which largely comes from policies coming from the federal government. Politics is the legal distribution of scarce wealth, power, and resources. U.S. Secretary of Agriculture Tom Vilsack said the Biden administration would be focused on closing those inequalities. The USDA will battle 3 systemic problems concurrently. The USDA will battle 3 systemic problems concurrently. 1, a broken farm system. 2, food insecurity. And 3, a healthcare crisis. A broken farm system, food insecurity, and a healthcare crisis. Now, after 8 years as Agriculture Secretary during the Obama administration, Tom Vilsack returns to the USDA at a time of rising food insecurity because of the pandemic. Largely because the pandemic was mishandled by an incompetent trader-in-chief, Benedict Donald. With high unemployment and American food bank pantries around the country running low, U.S. Secretary of Agriculture Tom Vilsack is charged with expanding and reimagining food assistance programs, which account for over 2/3 of the USDA's budget. SNAP, the food assistance program commonly called food stamps. WIC, a program for pregnant women, infants, and young children. Pandemic EBT, a program meant to replace free or subsidized meals for kids now learning online. And school meal programs are all on the table. Now, during his previous term, critics said Tom Vilsack failed to address long-standing complaints of discrimination against black farmers in access to USDA loans and other programs. After months of national debate about systemic racism and reparations for slavery and segregation, Tom Vilsack says he will make rooting out racism at the agency of the U.S. Department of Agriculture and in agriculture a priority. After months of national debate about systemic racism and reparations for slavery and segregation, the new U.S. Department of Agriculture Secretary Tom Vilsack says he will make rooting out racism at the agency and in agriculture a priority. The American Rescue Plan will pay $5 billion to farmers of color who have lost 90% of their land over the past century because of systemic discrimination, and a cycle of debt. Now, not a single Republican in the House of Representatives or the U.S. Senate voted for the $1.9 trillion American Rescue Plan that this $5 billion is in. Okay, so read the rest of this. They have highlights of the interview. They talk about the, let's look here quickly. They talk about the $5 billion. Number one is roughly 90% in front. Let's look at this here. I made some notes. Okay. This time is significantly different. We're obviously facing a health and economic crisis. There are three systemic things we need to deal with at this time, Tom Vilsack said. Number one is that on roughly 90% of farms today, the majority of income is not generated by the farmer. On roughly 90% of farms today, the majority of income is not generated by the farmer. That suggests to me a need to transform our food and agriculture system. Number two is the fact that we have 43 million Americans in need of nutrition assistance, and we have the healthcare issues that currently has 60% of the adult population with one chronic disease. 60% of the adult population in America has at least one chronic disease. 40% with two chronic diseases, and 70+% of adults overweight and obese. So that ties to largely the foods that they eat and access to the foods that they eat, which then ties into food deserts, zoning for businesses in your city, which deals with the zoning board, which is part of city government. And it deals with, you see, your zip code largely helps to dictate the status of your health. Having access to health care, having hospitals in your area, having grocery stores, not gas stations that sell food, but grocery stores, healthier restaurants, all that deals with zoning, that deals with the income levels of the communities, the demographics of the community, things like that. Your zip code largely helps to dictate the quality of your health. And we've got children who are headed toward that type of future. Okay, 70+% of adults overweight and obese, and we've got children who are headed toward that type of future. This suggests the need for a transformed food and agriculture system. That's government, though. This is something that government does. Politics is the legal distribution of scarce wealth, power, and resources, and the writing of laws, statutes, ordinances, amendments, and treaties, their adoption, interpretation, and enforcement. All this deals with government. Okay, so I want to go to this clip here. We talked about it before from Politics Nation. Reverend Al Sharpton interviewed John Wesley Boyd Jr., who is the president of the Black Farmers Union. Okay, and he's talking about Lindsey Graham, spineless Lindsey Graham. Lindsey Graham criticized the $5 billion going to African American farmers, but Lindsey Graham didn't want to talk about almost a century of racism and discrimination towards African American farmers when it came to getting government loans. He didn't want to deal with that. Okay, he didn't want to deal with that history and why the $5 billion is needed. He just wanted to attack the $5 billion, which is a drop in the bucket, by the way. Also, I mean, it's much needed, but that's not all that's needed. Okay, hold on just a second. What happened here? So there's an article from rawstory.com. We talked about it here on this show when it came out. March 14th, 2021. Black farmer Lindsey Graham must apologize for racist comment about subsidies kept from farmers of color for years. Lindsey Graham must apologize for racist comment about subsidies kept from farmers of color for years. And the interview I'm going to is in this article. The video, the interview from Politics Nation is in this article here. Okay. Let's go to this. Let's go to this clip.
This newly passed COVID relief package aims to correcting a historic wrong, allocating $5 billion with a B dollars in aid to the nation's black farmers, who have seen nearly all of their farmland lost over the last century, having been largely shut out of federal programs that benefited their white peers. But rather than view their aid as helping a historically disenfranchised group, Republicans have, of course, called it racist and tagged it with that other R word, reparations. Joining me now, John Boyd Jr., founder and president of the National Black Farmers Association. Mr. Boyd, as you just read from my intro, I want to reiterate that since 1910, black farmers have lost 90% of their land, some 12 million acres, largely due to systematic racism. For our viewers, what does that discrimination look like, specifically where banking and access to federal aid are concerned? You and I have talked about this for years. You've been on the forefront of it. Explain what has happened historically and why this means something.
Well, Reverend Sharpton, thank you for having me. And first of all, I'd like to thank you for helping me with the Claims Remedy Act of 2010 that helped nearly 20,000 black farmers receive their settlement from the United States Department of Agriculture. What this new measure does is it rectifies a wrong for black and other farmers of color. We've been totally shut out of the U.S. Farm Subsidy Program, U.S. Farm lending at the United States Department of Agriculture, rural development loans. We've been totally shut out. And under the last administration, Reverend Sean, they sold out $29 billion to primarily white farmers in this country, where black farmers didn't participate at all. And when we put this bill in a part of the COVID relief bill, 10 senators sponsored amendments to pull our language out. And Senator Lindsey Graham, who was a very outspoken critic, said it really bothered him that we were a part of the spending bill. So we've been having an uphill battle for decades, and we've been fighting this fight for a very, very long time, and now's the time to change it. And right now, Reverend Sharpton, for the first time in history, we have a black in the Ag Committee, Chairman Scott. We have 2 blacks on the Senate Agriculture Committee, Senator Warnock and Senator Booker. And we have a president and vice president that certainly want to help and receptive to helping our nation's black farmers.
Now, let me go back to what you said.
So hold on just one second here. So he mentioned Senator Warnock and Senator Cory Booker. Senator Raphael Warnock of Georgia, and Senator Cory Booker of New Jersey. They fought to get that $5 billion into the $1.9 trillion American Rescue Plan to go to black farmers. Senator Warnock, if they had not won, if Senator Warnock had not won his seat, this bill would not have passed, because Republicans will be in control of the Senate. Senator Warnock won the seat from Senator Kelly Loeffler, Republican. If Warnock lost that Senate race, Democrats would not have been able to get this bill passed. This is an example of how elections have consequences. They passed Senate Bill 202 and signed into law by Brian Kemp today because they want to take Warnock's seat back. This is one of the reasons why. They want to take Warnock's Senate seat back, because Warnock is finishing out the last 2 years of a 6-year term. Senator Reverend Raphael Warnock has to run for re-election in 2022. Republicans are trying to take that Senate seat back. See, this is an example of how elections have consequences. You got to have the proper people in place to push the bills and vote on the bills, to write the bills and vote on the bills and get them passed, they have policies that are beneficial to us, and vote the people out of office and block the people who are trying to stop the bills and block the bills that are beneficial to us and who are writing bills that are harmful to us. This is understanding political self-defense. This is a concept I teach about, political self-defense, and understanding how laws and policies impact the economic conditions of African Americans. And it's not, it's not always about what someone can do for you or what a politician can do for you. It's also understanding how to block what people are trying to do to you. And you also have to understand how to protect gains that were made once you get them, because there's always someone trying to take you back and reverse the policies that are beneficial to you. We don't understand the concept of protecting gains that were made, because a lot of times we'll vote in an election, then go to sleep for the next 2 or 4 years. You can't do that. You have to understand this continuous process. Republicans understand this. Many of us don't. Okay, let's continue here.
We have a president and vice president that certainly want to help and receptive to helping our nation's black farmers.
Now, let me go back to what you said, because as expected, the assistance to black farmers contained in the president's relief package has been attacked as racially discriminatory, perhaps the most vocal detractor being, as you mentioned, South Carolina Senator Lindsey Graham, who has called the aid reparations. Just listen to this.
In this bill, if you're a farmer, your loan will be forgiven up to 120% of your loan, not 100%, but 120% of your loan if you're socially disadvantaged, if you're African American, some other minority. But if you're white person, if you're a white woman, no forgiveness. That's reparations.
Now, clearly he has no problem with or interest in fixing the systemic discrimination that black farmers have faced for decades. But that's to be expected. What are your thoughts on the senator's complaints, though, Mr. Boyd?
Well, I'll tell you, Reverend Sharpton, I lobbied Senator Lindsey Graham as a congressman. I lobbied him as a senator. I've been by his office and asked him to help me fix the problems at the United States Department of Agriculture that caused black farmers to lose millions of acres of land and address the lack of loans and subsidies. And he's never once used his megaphone to speak out against the discrimination. But as soon as we get justice here, some 30 years later, his very first words, he said he found it troubling. And in his last part of his statement, he said, well, we need to check them. He should have been checking us when we came by his office to ask him to help fix the problems at the United States Department of Agriculture. He should have been checking us when we were sharecroppers and survived by Jim Crow. Members of Congress elected by Senator Lindsey Graham should have been checking us. So I find his comments racist, and we're calling on him. The National Black Farmers Association is calling for him to apologize, Senator Lindsey Graham, and we're making that announcement on your show. He needs to apologize not only to black farmers, but to black people in this country who struggled for so very, very long, and now we get a chance for a little bit of justice. And he uses his megaphone to play this race type thing when he knows firsthand that black farmers are suffering. When he has 6,000 black farmers in his state, and he won't help us, but he uses his megaphone to try to deny payment from black farmers.
You know, a century ago, there were 1 million black farmers. Now there are fewer than 50,000. According to—
Okay, hold on. I just want to pause it right here. I want to back this up. Pay attention to what John Boyd said. Lindsey Graham is from South Carolina. Lindsey Graham represents South Carolina in the U.S. Senate. Lindsey Graham has 6,000 African-American farmers in South Carolina, and he's not helping them. He has 6,000 African-American farmers in South Carolina, and he's not helping them. And South Carolina is also the first state to secede from the Union, December 20th, 1860. And South Carolina is where the Civil War started in April of 1861 also, okay? Just I don't know if that's all a coincidence or what, but just to throw that in there. All right. Lindsey Graham has 6,000 African American farmers in South Carolina, and he's not helping them. Let's go back to this clip.
When he has 6,000 black farmers in his state, and he won't help us, but he uses his megaphone to try to deny payment from black farmers.
You know, a century ago, there were 1 million black farmers. Now there are fewer than 50,000. According to the Department of Agriculture, Agriculture Secretary Tom Vilsack says he's aware of the disparity and wants to grow more farmers of color. Apart from this relief package, where should he start?
He should start, just like you said, immediately to get the debt relief out to the thousands of black farmers that desperately need it right now. And I spoke to Secretary Vilsack yesterday and urged him to hurry up and put in place the commission and to get the debt relief to not just black farmers, but farmers of color, Native American farmers, Hispanic farmers, and other socially disadvantaged farmers. He can't be the same Secretary Vilsack he was under the Obama years. He's going to have to take a more aggressive approach to help fix the culture, the discriminating culture, Reverend Sharpton, because nobody has been fired for the act of discrimination, for discriminating against me and thousands of other black farmers.
Yeah.
The only one I know that was fired was Shirley Sherrod. She was fired the next day. We need accountability for those people who were found guilty of discriminating. Some heads need to roll so that people know that this can't be the same old United States Department of Agriculture. And Secretary Vilsack needs to make a quick announcement that USDA is open for business for blacks and other minority farmers.
All right, I'll have to leave it there, but you worked on this a long time. I've been there with you, and I'm glad to see some light in this darkness. Thank you for being here.
Okay, so that's from March 14th, 2021, Politics Nation. Reverend Al Sharpton speaks with John Boyd of the Black Farmers Association. And he's dealing with history. He's breaking down history, and he's dealing with, a history of discrimination. But then you have Lindsey Graham that doesn't want to address why the $5 billion is there and how African-American farmers were largely shut out of the $26 billion that was allocated to largely white farmers by Trump. He doesn't want to deal with that. Okay, so very quickly, let's go back to the article from the Washington Post. And this deals with an interview with U.S. Department of Agriculture Secretary Tom Vilsack that the Washington Post did. All right, so how do you create access to nutritious, healthy food? And how do you make sure the programs you are utilizing don't exacerbate the gap, but actually begin to close it? This is what the Washington Post asked Tom Vilsack. Why is the $5 billion? Well, no, this is what Tom Vilsack was asking. They asked, why is the $5 billion for socially disadvantaged farmers in the rescue plan, the $1.9 trillion American Rescue Plan? He said 2 reasons. One, you've got this systemic racism that basically put these people behind and they've never caught up. This is beginning of addressing that issue. This is the beginning of addressing that issue. And second is the gap in the way the COVID relief was distributed. The COVID relief, the $26 billion under Trump that went to farmers. And African-American farmers only got 1/10 of 1% of that money. About $20.8 million. Now, he was asked a question. Black farmers I've talked to have focused on the urgency of getting that debt relief. What's the time frame for having black farmers' debt forgiven? He said it's more complicated than most people realize. You have to identify which loans are guaranteed with a prepaid penalty, and you have to document that penalty and see how that's going to be handled. The point the point of this isn't to suggest we're going to delay, but that we need to think about this and to be careful in how we proceed to make sure we're not creating any more problems for these folks than we have already. And there needs to be assistance and outreach. There needs to be assistance and outreach to let people know that they are entitled to this relief and how to take full advantage of it. Okay. All right. So read the rest of this here. This is from the Washington Post. TheHill.com also has an article about this as well. There's some other outlets that picked up on this. But this is an interview that the Washington Post did with Tom Vilsack, new Secretary of the Department of Agriculture. If you eat food, you should be concerned about the Department of Agriculture. Now, if you don't eat food, you don't have to worry about it. If you eat food, you should be concerned about the Department of Agriculture. If you own an African American owned business and you have customers who eat food, you should be concerned about the Department of Agriculture. Agriculture Secretary Tom Vilsack says only 0.1% of Trump administration's COVID farm relief went to Black farmers. Okay. All right. So we'll post a link here to this article. So lastly, also I forgot to tell people you can still register for the online course that I teach, Ancient Kemet, the Moors, and the Ma'afa. Understand the transatlantic slave trade, what they didn't teach you in school. We deal with thousands of years of history and deal with what led up to the transatlantic slave trade taking place as well. Class normally meets Tuesdays, 8 p.m. to 10 p.m. Eastern Standard Time online. I do a PowerPoint presentation. We have video clips, book references, articles, things like that. It's an 8-week, 16-hour online course. We deal with thousands of years of history. We deal with the 800-year occupation of Europe by the Africans known as the Moors. So I do the classes live. All the classes are recorded, so you can go back and watch them over and over again. As soon as you register, you can watch the class from this week. Next class is Tuesday, March 30th. Okay. There's also bonus content that you can watch as well. You can watch from around the world. Class is regularly $130, on sale $80. Ancient Kemet, the Moors, and the Ma'afa. Understand the transatlantic slave trade, what they didn't teach you in school. Okay. All right. So today is the birth date of one Aretha Franklin, born March 25th, 1942. We know Aretha Franklin passed away August 16th, 2018. The Queen of Soul. Somebody's going riding on the freeway in the pink Cadillac. I mean, I had that song. I had that album from Aretha Franklin. We're going on. They came out in the 80s, like 84, 85, something like that. I had that. I had that on 33 1/3 from Aretha Franklin. All right. Okay. So I posted about this today. This information comes from the National R&B Music Society, Inc. About Aretha Franklin, the Queen of Soul. Let me post this here. Okay, so when we look at this here about Aretha Franklin, so Aretha Franklin began her career as a child singing gospel at New Bethel Baptist Church in Detroit, where her father, C.L. Franklin, was a minister. In 1960, at the age of 18, she embarked on a secular career, recording for Columbia Records, but only achieving modest success. Following her signing to Atlantic Records, now contrary to popular belief, she was not on Motown. She lived in Detroit, but she was not on Motown. Following her signing to Atlantic Records in 1967, Aretha Franklin achieved commercial acclaim and success with songs such as Respect, You Make Me Feel Like a Natural Woman, Spanish Harlem, and Think. By the end of the 1960s, she had gained the title of the Queen of Soul. Aretha Franklin eventually recorded a total of 112 charted singles on Billboard, including 77 Hot 100 entries, 17 top 10 pop singles, 100 R&B entries, and 20 number one R&B singles. 20 number one R&B singles, becoming the most charted female artist in the country's history. The most charted female artist in the country's history. Now, Aretha Franklin also recorded acclaimed albums such as "I Never Loved a Man the Way I Love You," "Lady Soul," "Young, Gifted, and Black," and "Amazing Grace" before experiencing problems with her record company by the mid-1970s. After her father was shot in 1979, Aretha Franklin left Atlantic Records and signed with Arista Records, finding success with her part in the film The Blues Brothers with the albums Jump to It and Who Zooming Who. Yeah, that was the album. Yeah, I remember that. Who Zooming Who. And Pink Cadillac and Jimmy Mack. I remember all those songs. Now, in 1998, Aretha Franklin won international acclaim for singing the opera aria Nessun Dorma, not exactly sure how to pronounce that, at the Grammys of that year, replacing Luciano Pavarotti. Later that same year, she scored her final top 40 recording with "A Rose Is Still a Rose." Aretha Franklin's other popular and well-known hits include "Rock Steady," "Jump to It," "Freeway of Love," "Who Zooming Who," "Chain of Fools," "I Knew You Were Waiting for Me" with George Michael. I remember that song too. That was a big one. "I Knew You Were Waiting for Me" with George Michael. And a remake of the Rolling Stones song "Jumpin' Jack Flash." Aretha Franklin has won a total of 18 Grammy Awards and is one of the best-selling musical artists of all time, having sold over 75 million records worldwide. Aretha Franklin has been honored throughout her career, including a 1987 induction into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. The Rock and Roll Hall of Fame in 2005. In August 2012, Aretha Franklin was inducted into the GMA Gospel Music Hall of Fame. Franklin is listed in at least 2 all-time lists on Rolling Stone magazine, including the 100 greatest artists of all time and the 100 greatest singers of all time. Okay, so we want to say happy birthday to Aretha Franklin, born March 25th, 1942. All right, and also was it Soul TV had Soul TV had a posting about Aretha Franklin today as well. I think we posted that one from Soul. I think I posted the one from Soul TV on my personal page. They had a good one on Aretha Franklin as well. Yeah, they had a good one on Aretha Franklin also. Also, today is the birth date of Haywood Nelson. Haywood Nelson from What's Happening. Okay, Dwayne on What's Happening. Born March 25th, 1960. So happy birthday also to Haywood Nelson as well. Everybody remembers. Everybody remembers Dwayne. Hey on on What's Happening. Okay, so happy birthday to Haywood Nelson also. All right, well, look, hey, we're here Monday through Friday, 11 p.m. to 12 midnight Eastern Standard Time, and Sundays, 9 p.m. to 11 p.m. 9 p.m. to 11 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, the African History Network show. Visit our website, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com. All of my DVD lectures are there, digital downloads. We have the bundle pack, the Black Migration 1619 to 2019 bundle pack. We have it in DVD format and digital download. Black Migration 1619 to 2019. And these are 6 of my lectures. They deal with a lot of history. It also includes 6 principles of political self-defense, understanding how laws and policies impact the economic conditions of African Americans. 6 principles of political self-defense. And it includes, let's see here. We'll look at this right quick. This is Black Migration 1619 to 2019. It includes a presentation I did during African American History Month also in 2019. And it deals with some of the history of the Great Migration. Okay, so let's see here, where is that? Okay. We'll look at this quickly. I just posted the link here. It's at our website, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com. We have it right on the homepage also. But when you scroll down, okay, so there's a 6 DVD set. So here's a collage here that shows them. You get my presentation I did. It's a 3-hour presentation dealing with the history of Juneteenth. Juneteenth, Emancipation Day, but not Independence Day. We never got our 40 acres and a mule. Also deal with Dr. King's Poor People's Campaign. And I deal with Malcolm X in there as well. So we have that one for Juneteenth. Where's that? Juneteenth. Juneteenth is coming up also. Okay. You can buy these in the bundle pack or individually. And we have them on digital download and DVD. This one right here deals with, this is a 3-hour presentation I did. It deals with the little known history of why African Americans switched from the Republican Party to the Democratic Party. And I deal with the Lily White movement in 1928, which was a Southern strategy. And I deal with the Civil Rights Movement and the Great Migration. You get this one here. This is a really good one. Black Migration 1619 to 2019, from the birth of a nation to the Red Summer of 1919, the Great Migration, and the Detroit Race Riot of 1943 during World War II. The Detroit Race Riot of 1943. This one here has 2 presentations on it. 6 principles of political self-defense, understanding how public policies and laws affect the economic conditions of African Americans. The first presentation on here I did in Atlanta at the Black Homeschooling Conference in Atlanta in 2019. This one deals with the, I thought I was showing this too. I thought I had this on. Hold on. Let me back up. I thought I had the screen share on. Okay, so we have this here. Okay, so this shows the 6 DVDs you get, and then it has a breakdown of them here. It shows them individually. This deals with the little known fact of why African Americans switched from the Republican Party to the Democratic Party. We were pushed out of the Republican Party. That deals with the Lily White movement in 1928, which is a Southern strategy. Okay. A lot of people don't know that history. This deals with the real history of Juneteenth. Juneteenth history, Emancipation Day, but not Independence Day. We never got our 40 acres and a mule. Dr. King's Poor People's Campaign. We're coming to get our check. Also deal with how Malcolm X was calling for a unification of the civil rights leaders and their followers while he was still in the Nation of Islam. July 31st, 1963, Malcolm X sends a letter to the leading civil rights leaders, including Dr. King, requesting a meeting in Harlem. And he says we have to find a common solution to a common problem posed by a common enemy. This is Black Migration 1619 to 2019, from the birth of a nation to the Red Summer of 1919, the Great Migration, and the Detroit Race Riot of 1943, which was during World War II. Detroit Race Riot of 1943. This is 6 principles of political self-defense, understanding how public policies and laws affect the economic conditions of African Americans. There are 2 presentations on here. The first presentation I did in Atlanta in 2019 at the Black Homeschooling Conference, because I usually speak there each year. The 3rd weekend of July, Queen Thais and her group put on the Black Homeschooling Conference. I need to contact Queen Thais also, see what's going on this year. Okay, so this is a deep presentation. 6 principles of political self-defense. And then also now this one here, this deals with a history of when Black men dominated horse racing. When Black men dominated horse racing and how an organized effort forced them out. Because a lot of the early winners of the Kentucky Derby were African Americans. 1875, the first Kentucky Derby was ran. Oliver Lewis, 19 years old, won the first Kentucky Derby. He's African American. His trainer for his horse, Ansel Williamson, was a former slave. Okay, you see Isaac Murphy, Jimmy Winkfield. Okay, these are all winners of the early Kentucky Derbies. So this is a history that a lot of people don't know about, how we used to dominate horse racing. And lastly, this presentation right here, ancient Africans in America before Native Americans, Columbus, or slavery from Kemp to Wakanda. This is a deep presentation. Deals with the ancient African presence in the Americas, including this land, going back at least 51,700 years ago, this land we call the United States of America. So this is a 6 DVD bundle package, either in DVD or digital download format. Black Migration 1619 to 2019. Black Migration 1619 to 2019. Okay. That's available right now at AfricanHistoryNetwork.com. You can also register for the online course that I teach as well, Ancient Kemet, the Moors, and the Ma'afa, Understanding the Transatlantic Slave Trade, what they didn't teach you in school. So when you scroll down the homepage of our website, you see information about our show. You can listen to the audio podcast of our show here. You can click here to read articles that I write. You scroll down, we have information about the class. Click right here to register here. And it takes you to the next page, and you can just enroll right there. As soon as you enroll, as soon as you register for the class, you can start watching the content. You start watching the classes, okay? All right. We have to get out of here. Remember, at the African History Network, we focus on educating, empowering, inspiring people of African descent throughout the diaspora and around the world. Right now, it's correct your own behavior. Not over till we win Wakanda forever. Okay, follow us on our Facebook fan page, The African History Network, The African History Network. Turn on notifications so you know when we go live. Follow us on our YouTube channel, Michael M. Hotep, IMHOTEP. So you know when we go live also. And if you support us through Cash App, be sure to type in $ the AHN show, SHOW, $ the AHN show through Cash App, and it'll come up, it'll say Michael, and it has my picture there. Okay. All right, we got to get out of here. Should be on Roland Martin Unfiltered on Friday. So we'll talk about that. And then also on Friday's show, I'm going to share a segment. Let's see, Friday and Sunday, I'll share a segment when I was on the Tammy Mack Late Show on Fox Soul TV. I was on the Tammy Mack Late Show on Tuesday. That's why we didn't broadcast the African History Network show live on Tuesday, because her show is the same time as mine. It's on Fox Soul TV, the streaming service. They have Cocktails and Queens on there with Lisa Ray and Selena Johnson and Claudia Jordan. So I was on a panel discussion dealing with the boom in biracial advertising. Dr. Wendy Osefo sat in for Tammy Mack. That was Tuesday, March 23rd. So Friday and Sunday, Friday show and Sunday show, I'll share an excerpt of the panel discussion as well. All right, we'll talk to y'all later. Talk to you tomorrow night. Peace. Thanks for tuning in.